and the troops of his noblemen. Meanwhile, the Ottomans had managed to advance themselves into a position well protected by woods and ridges and set up an encampment there. Suleiman ordered his troops into a tiered defense made up of 3 lines. The first 2 lines were made up of 30,000 Rumelian and Anatolian cavalry, supplemented by 4,000 Janissaries and 150 cannons. They were led by Ibrahim Pasha. The third line was led by Sultan Suleiman himself and was made up of 15,000 Janissaries and Sipahis. They guarded the bulk of the Ottoman artillery, which was protected by a circle of wagons. Lightly armed Akinji horsemen occupied the left flank, close to the Hungarian line, and a rearguard of heavy cavalry and footmen remained back in the encampment in reserve. On August 29th, fighting began. The Hungarians were the first to strike, and commenced their assault at 3 in the afternoon, knowing the Muslims in Suleiman's army would be occupied with their afternoon prayer. A crescendo of Hungarian artillery fired across the battlefield. The right wing of the Hungarian first line charged the Ottomans. The Rumelian cavalry were not prepared for the assault, and the heavily armoured Hungarian footmen broke through the first 2 lines of the Ottoman defence and fought their way towards the Ottoman third line. Inspired by this initial success, the second line of Hungarian mounted knights charged into battle, joining the fierce melee at the fringes and encircling the Rumelian cavalry from the outside, pushing them back towards their camp. Meanwhile, the Hungarian left wing stabbed at the centre of the disordered Ottoman first line. The Hungarians fought bravely, breaking through to the Sultan's position, who was now in danger of being cut down. However, this success was unsustainable. As the Hungarians came within range of the Ottoman wagon fortress, a volley of guns and artillery inflicted heavy damage upon the first line. Soon after, the Janissaries formed ranks around their sultan and charged the Hungarian knights, overwhelming them with superior numbers and martial discipline. The tide had begun to turn. After 2 hours of fighting, the Ottoman reserves back at camp had finally rallied onto the battlefield and joined the Ottoman lines. Meanwhile, the Rumelian cavalry began to regroup. With Vizier Ibrahim at the head, the Ottomans launched a fierce counterattack, pushing the knights in the second line back towards their camp. From here, the Ottoman army advanced on both flanks to finish off the remaining foes. The Rumelian cavalry encircled the knights from behind, while the Janissaries and reserves overwhelmed what remained of the footmen. The Hungarians were utterly swarmed by overwhelming Ottoman numbers, surrounded in separate little pockets, and massacred. The battle had ended in a great victory for Suleiman and a complete disaster for the Hungarians. When the battle seemed lost, King Louis had attempted to flee. In the chaos, his horse had thrown him into the flooded Chele brook, and his heavy armour had dragged him to a watery grave. The battle at Mohacs was an abject disaster for the Hungarian kingdom, whose government was now effectively annihilated. While sources vary, it is generally accepted that anywhere from 14,000 to 20,000 Hungarian soldiers were slaughtered in the initial battle, with thousands being taken prisoner and beheaded the next day. Suleiman could not believe he'd destroyed the entire Hungarian army so quickly.